First of all, thank you to our previous presenter. I can see how our two presentations link quite nicely because the idea of distance and bonding is quite related to our idea of sort of isolation and feeling different in the not positive way and creating a sense of belonging. So thank you. And greetings from South Africa. In our team, most of the people are in South Africa. So we have our great leader Zoe in the UK, and then myself and Talia are on her team and have worked on this together. So it's a collaborative effort between the three of us. And Talia has also joined us here in the audience from South Africa. Just to note that the slides are available, so that could be quite useful if you want to apply some of these things to your own context. We've tried to make it a mix of interesting theory and then also some practical tools. Yeah. All right, so this is our team. We have Zoe at the top, and then myself and Talia. And we are the instructional design team for the Cambridge Advanced Online product. And in terms of our team, everyone has some experience in the past and in our role in creating a sense of belonging and really caring about a vision for a better future. And in addition to our instructional design team, for Cambridge Advanced Online, we work with various other course design teams who are based in the UK and the Philippines. So we really do have quite a lot of input from different regions. So I'd like to start off with our context and how we are envisioning the future for a global team, as a global team, because we want to be able to reach this global audience and have everyone be able to feel like they belong. It is an entirely distance learning product, and as we know, sometimes with distance, there isn't that sense of connection and belonging in a space. So I'd like to point out here that there is so much diversity in our own team, and we see that as a strength. As people who are very value-driven, we put our diverse lived experiences into our work, and then because of that, our work becomes welcoming to people with diverse lived experiences. And you'll see in the slides these purple boxes, and it says from team discussion. I won't be able to go through each one of them, but if you are downloading the slides, please read it. That's our team voices coming through in quotes in the words. And then just noting the little purple block, the reflection prompt. The quote, "nothing about us without us," is often used in the space of advocacy. And it could be controversial looking in a course that Cambridge offering to professionals, mid-career professionals. But I'd like you, as I speak, to reflect on how this could apply both practically and ethically throughout. And when I say diverse lived experiences, I'm talking across race, gender, queer gender, neurodivergence, religion, as many different types of disability, I didn't mention, the kinds of diversities we're talking about going forward. And if you have any questions on that later, that could be in the Q&A, or you could email us. Okay. This is the agenda for what we'll be doing. We've got 5 different sections, starting off with why belonging matters in digital learning, design principles for digital learning, a case study, which I'll be presenting our product Cambridge Online Advanced and how we have applied these different principles, then actioning designing for belonging, which is hopefully quite practical, and then next steps, the sorts of things we need to be envisioning for the future in both practical and ethical ways. Okay, so starting off, what does it mean to belong? Basic definition, that you want to feel represented, included, and accepted, in this case, in an educational setting, and that your contributions matter. You're not just there, but you're cared about. Why this matters, we're going to look back and forth between practical and ethical reasons. They will be linked, of course. In the practical sense, uh, feelings of belonging is linked to learning engagement and retention. And in an ethical sense, people from marginalized cultures and groups get access to the same opportunities to education, inclusion, and esteem. And so we will balance this throughout. But first, I would like to show you some of the practical things that will be looked at. Here are some of the practical course outcomes of a sense of belonging in digital learning. So in the space where a lot of us are looking at how to improve our design, here are 4 different potential benefits. One is engagement. So when students feel connected and supported, there's both more cognitive and emotional engagement. There's better retention, so reduced dropout rates, and then more successful course completion. With repeat learners, which for many of our courses is quite a big source of income. Positive learning experiences foster trust and motivate learners to return. They like the experience and want to be back for it. And then maybe a bit more abstract, lifelong learning. So well-being, focused environment will build learner confidence and lead to them having a love for learning. Okay, so the design principles for belonging. We're going to be looking at 5 different ones, but I want to start off first with the global context because it's useful to know your context before you go into the specifics. And if you don't intentionally consider the full context, in this case we're looking global, then you might automatically accidentally default to assuming your own. And with our global team and the things we care about, hopefully we can bring some things to your attention that may have been accidentally left out in some contexts. So here we're looking at the global context, first at cultural and socioeconomic inclusion. And regardless of the sort of price range of your courses and what you might expect, you always have people coming from different backgrounds that will be bringing these different experiences. So when we talk about cultural and socioeconomic inclusion, we'll be focusing on things like the intentional integration of diverse identities, not just as a consequence of something, and looking at equitable access and success so that all students have the opportunity to reach their potential and not have that capped for some other reason. We're looking at education as a social process. So values and lived experiences are one of the sources of sometimes the most important learning, and that in this case, peer learning in a lot of our courses. And I just want to draw your attention to the first part of that one team discussion, that celebrating all forms of contribution so that everyone has the opportunity to take part. But I like the word celebrating because that was something that naturally came out of our team. It's more than just including and giving an opportunity. There's that appreciation in it. And then the last point, we have that by looking at culture and socioeconomic inclusion, you're rejecting the deficit narrative. You're having the belief that everyone has something to contribute, even if it's not the kind of knowledge or experience that is typically valued, say, in an academic setting. And to look at some of the differences between cultural inclusion and socioeconomic inclusion, cultural inclusion promotes appreciation for different cultures and ways of living, and respect is a foundation for belonging. And by this, some people find it controversial because of what respect is interpreted as. Here, we're not saying you have to agree with everybody or like their opinion. We're saying that every single participant needs to be respecting human dignity that needs to be built into the course, and believing that everyone has something you can learn from, no matter who that person is. That's what we mean by respect, is a foundation of belonging. And if your course is structured in a way that promotes that and respects that, it can encourage students who may not automatically lend themselves to that kind of mindset to start building that. Then with socioeconomic inclusion, this can be a little bit more on the practical sense, but you have to have insight. So you'll want to be looking at reducing barriers for people from different socioeconomic environments, whether it's being marginalized or in poverty or whatever that could be. And then I would like to draw attention to intersection. So that's when a person experiences more than one type of discrimination or difference, or both a cultural difference and a socioeconomic difference. When you have intersection, it's exponential rather than additive. The person may face even more barriers or more exclusion, and you need to be aware that that can happen. And to just draw attention to some of the things said in our team discussion, I rather liked when a team member said to just ingest knowledge, they're losing out. If you're just taking things in, maybe a bit more old school idea of how you're learning with your textbook absorbing, you lose out on some of the best benefits of global distance education. And that by sharing diverse experiences, you can actually spark ideas and innovation that wouldn't have occurred if you didn't have this kind of diversity. Right, so this slide is useful as a checklist that you can apply. I won't go through every single one right now, but I will just look at the first three of each in no particular order. When you're looking at respect and valuing of all students, that's slightly more on the complicated side, whereas mitigating barriers can sometimes be more practical, almost a checklist that you can use without having to explore too far. So you can ask yourself these questions, starting with respecting and valuing. Representation is something very important, not just saying you're welcome, but also we understand you and want you to be a part of the course and the examples we show and the context we show. You want to avoid monocultural, Eurocentric viewpoints. I know that's some big terminology that maybe not everyone knows, but if it isn't familiar to you, we had a keynote speaker refer to decolonizing education, having more voices, and the sort of cultural biases that often happen in education. So have a look at that. And then we're looking at accommodating diverse norms around things like collaboration, communication, and authority. So, for example, if you have an activity that's a discussion group, that might be something uncomfortable for people from certain cultures. So maybe you need to have an alternative space where that's not a factor, where someone else has the opportunity to shine. So accommodating these differences, being aware that these differences might exist. And that comes from knowing your students. On the mitigating barriers, we're looking at things like using suitable language for non-native English speakers. You could also include things like what level of education you might expect someone to have. Do your courses, being distance, function on low bandwidth connections and be accessible on mobile? And then things like accommodating time zones for live participation and deadlines. So you may need to include some flexibility. All right. The case study, Cambridge Advance Online. That's what we're working on. So this is just a brief introduction to what the product is. We make short synchronous courses for professionals. They're usually about 4 to 6 weeks. We have very involved tutors and live sessions, and it's aimed at mid-career professionals. The course is created in partnership with the University of Cambridge academics. So we're wanting to be able to link practice and academics so that people who want to really advance in their career can reach that knowledge. and expertise. And then we have very dedicated tutors. And this is sometimes different from other courses, online courses, but if it is something that's not in the education you provide, these principles still apply, but I will be talking specifically about the role of the tutors. And our product could be seen as something like a high-touch online learning experience. On the left is just a little screenshot of how our website might appear and looking at some of the different options. So here's some nice statistics, not to boast a little bit too much. At the time of writing, so this was before my team actually was created, we're very new, barely a year. But this was some learner feedback, and it all ranges from 79 to 96%. But maybe more important to what I want to speak about is the categories we have for the course feedback. Course overall, academic and tutor support, group size, live sessions, and the social learning elements. And just having these numbers isn't necessarily the broadest that one could have. So actually, just last year, our department hired a data and insights manager to increase the effect of student feedback, both questions and analysis, and using some of the data that exists that we can access digitally. This links back to the slide we had with the 5 principles of belonging. And we'll go through the 5 now. And this is how we apply them in our course. And so we start with looking within that global context. But this is just some examples. So under sort of inclusion and opportunities, we're looking at diverse formats and examples. This can mean things like varied content types and audience relevant examples. For that, you have to have some quite useful knowledge about your students. So that's will come in later. You want to have accessible design, ensuring accessibility and inclusive design. There are many different guides on that I want to investigate into that. So it's a huge field, accessibility and digital accessibility. And then inviting learner voice through things that are interactive, things that are reflective, and having context-aware learning. And then in this, I have just an example on the right, top right, showing that you can download a transcript. That's very basic stuff, having the closed captions. But then you can think a bit deeper. So the example in the bottom right comes from one of our courses, the Functional Neuroanatomy course. And it was very highly rated. The students very much enjoyed this hands-on creating models with putty and labeling it. It doesn't matter if someone is an academic or in an advanced medical career. Everyone likes a little bit of Play-Doh. But then there's something controversial. So even though it got very good feedback, if you look at diverse formats and examples and accessible design, it actually is a challenge because you may need to have some trade-offs. So this particular example isn't actually necessarily accessible to many people in various ways, including disability accessibility. So in this sort of controversial space, you may struggle to achieve both. And you'll need to think about that in your context and make sure that there is something for people who are not able to do something like this. And then there are questions like, how do you achieve both? Are alternative activities and assessments effective and fair? But it's something you're going to have to ask yourself in whatever you are designing. Then under fostering connection, community and connection through interaction, you want to be encouraging peer interaction. So this is community building through things like group work and peer reviews. If you have tutors like we do, you can facilitate icebreakers and introduction to get early on connection. And then tutors can help to celebrate what the students are doing. And this can be through building confidence and prompting deeper discussions. The example on the right comes from the Creativity, Problem Solving and Design Thinking course. In each module, as the students progress, they have chosen their own problem that they'll be working on from their own lives. And as they progress, they will put a picture of whatever they've been working on in that module, and then discuss with other participants, what worked well, what might they improve on, and giving suggestions to each other. So it's both a hands-on sharing, an emotional sharing, and then a communication sharing. And emotional intelligence and safety. Here we're mainly applying it to tutors in our context, but it's still important if you have something asynchronous and are using this through text. You want to make sure you have supportive tone. So our tutors are very encouraging with their language in announcements and in giving feedback, and we do a lot of that. There is an example message if you're downloading and would like to read it later. We make sure that our tutors have empathy in both the content and how they give their feedback, making sure that our learners are feeling understood. And they're always clear community guidelines that the tutor helps to facilitate in anything like a discussion to ensure that learners remain respectful and that the conversation is constructive. And that protects from any sort of exclusion or judgment. And a meaningful and visible support. Here we're looking at if a person is able to know what they need to do to succeed in the course. And they need to be able to be comfortable asking if they don't know and see someone who's accessible and willing to help them. That means that they can ask comfortably. So in the beginning, we start with clear guidance on expectations. So that's orientation models and deadlines, the breakdown of the course so they know what they need to be doing to succeed. There's always timely, personalized feedback. Personalized feedback isn't possible in many different courses, but with our high-touch tutors, that is something we're able to do. Making sure that being personalized and using inclusive rubrics, that person can be treated as an individual and given feedback for their own personal growth and professional growth. And then also a consistent tutor presence. So with this dedicated tutor, they're a touch point throughout the course. So no one is left feeling lost. So if someone does start feeling like they don't belong, it's something that can be picked up on early and then remedied. With relevance, representation, and personal meaning, we'll be looking at things like connect content to real-world contexts through relatable examples and varied case studies. On the bottom right, that's one of the case studies from our courses, and it's one I personally very much enjoyed reading because it reached a depth of social, poverty, cultural, and environmental factors, all just in one case study, and from a very caring point of view as well, which I very much appreciated. And then allowing learner choice. So the example of that diagram that I showed is that kind of flexibility, and that they could choose their own project, and that it could also be chosen for their own industry. So you're not limited to studying a concept in someone else's industry. It's very applicable to what you are doing, and you can take practical skills out of it to implement in your context. And then the use of reflection prompts, which also helps that sense of application, and that's embedded throughout to support that development of personal insight. And we have a reflection workbook that students can record these different reflections in, use for further questions, and then keep afterwards. And the top right is an example of that, of a reflection point. And then actioning, designed for belonging. Many of you will already be exposed in this field to the ADDIE model, analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate, and then repeating the cycle. So we'll just look at how you can apply belonging into this. And we do this very intentionally, that we are making sure that every step is being inclusive and following the kinds of strategies for belonging. And then in this application, I'd just like to use that reflection prompt, the idea that we're wanting to move from supporting people who are diverse or have more needs for being able to access things to designing or redesigning so that it's integrated from the start. Okay, so this is a bit of one of those resource slides that you can download and apply if you'd like to. As we go through each, I'll just choose one or two. So with Analyze, we want to be identifying what the course needs to deliver for each kind of student we may have. So you want to actually research what their backgrounds, their needs are, and what their barriers to belonging might be. And you could use past course feedback in that. When designing your learning experience, you want to include strategies for cultural and socioeconomic inclusion when you're planning this. And then just to highlight something that often gets left out, you want to plan accessibility, especially digital accessibility, from the start. It can't work if it's an add-on. The development stage is actually what our team really focuses on. So this is an important part for me personally. We're the ones who are implementing the strategies for inclusive and accessible content, the activities, the assessments, and almost being the person who brings that to life. In the ADDIE model, we often leave out an important part for distance learning. So I'm just mentioning there the learning management system. That can make a big difference for accessibility in terms of the socioeconomic sense and in terms of digital accessibility. So make sure that you are acknowledging that from the sense of belonging, it could increase or decrease. And also, it's a big component time-wise that is often left out in the ADDIE process. Implementation. Just pointing out two things here. You want to launch with a clear message of belonging and also collect data as often as possible on engagement. And you want to then evaluate your course. And you don't have to just do it when it's completed. It could also be at regular intervals. For example, it's quite nice to ask at the beginning how someone might rate their skills and interests, and then at the end of a module, ask if they feel that they've reached their personal goals relating to that. So yes, this is, again, it's available if you would like to have a look at the different examples given. I just want to end with... okay. Well, next steps were pretty much the end. Some lessons learned, and I think we will all be thinking of that anyway. And thank you for joining. And contact us if you would like. We would like to talk to you.